Welcome to the very first session of our Charm Up Talks. These are informal sessions. We're gonna chat. I have my coffee here, Theodulf, Mark, and our school on the background. Today we're gonna talk about plastic-free homes and green light district, two inspiring projects. We are together with Carl Taylor from UK, Accord, and Jill Fairford from Amsterdam, the Groene Grachten. Before getting started, I will give the floor to Peter to just tell a few words about Charm.
Thank you, Sultan. Yes, Charm is an international project and consisting of a couple of interesting partners. And we are doing projects on sustainability, and therefore we invited Carl today to talk about plastic-free houses. And if you like Charm, because I'm going to keep it short because we only have 30 minutes, you can go to our website, just Google Charm Interact NWE, and you will find it automatically. Back to you, Sultan.
Yeah, so Carl, we have 3 questions for you. Here they are, like, why do we need plastic-free homes? And how could you address circularity with plastic-free homes? And what is the most challenging building component that you could achieve plastic-free? Here, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Sultan. So I'm Carl Taylor. I work for Accord Housing Association in the UK, and we're part of the Charm partnership. And our demonstration exemplar is going to be based on trying to build virtually plastic-free homes. And so Sultan asked me to talk today about why do we need plastic-free homes. And so I thought I would share those 2 images with you, really. And the fact that 80% of the plastic produced ends up in the ocean. It is not a material that has a second use. It has a one-time use only. So from a circular perspective, if we're to produce circular homes, we need to take plastic out of the construction process because there's no second use for plastic going forward. We think of a home as being something that's there for a long time, but actually the components change fairly regularly. If you look at your own house, you've probably changed your kitchen, you've probably changed your bathroom, you might have changed windows or front door. All of those have plastic components in, and those plastic components, when you change them, end up either in landfill, unleaching into the oceans and sea water courses, or end up directly in the ocean and end up with seeds like that. 94% of the animal life that we have in this country is in the ocean, and we are killing it at a rapid rate, and a lot of it is through ingesting plastics. So how do we address circularity? That's the image that you can see on the screen of the 12 plastic-free apartments that we're going to use. Plastic is a really good product, but it's a single-use product. And the replacements, when you try and take plastic out of the construction process, tend to be more natural materials. Materials like lime, like clay, like metal and wood, that all can be reused and have a more natural material, and also give off less VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and therefore there may be some health advantages too. The construction method that we're using is a lightweight timber frame home that could be moved to alternative sites, and so has a circularity in it there as well. But the critical thing about it is about building a more natural home with materials that will have a second use going forward and not using single-use plastic. In terms of the difficulties, well, plastic is absolutely everywhere. When we started this journey, we thought it would be very simple to get plastic out of the construction process. It would just be about changing the plastic windows that went in the house and a plastic membrane in the timber frame. But actually, plastic, when you start looking for it, appears in almost every product that goes into a house. And there are some that are more challenging than others in terms of replacing. So in particular, the electrical components, almost everything to do with electrical electricity is plastic, and therefore there's difficulties getting rid of them from the whole system, although we have found mineral insulated cables which get rid of plastic from the cables, but not from all of the switching gear. In addition, because it's an apartment block that we're building, we have to have some fire safety measures in place, and there are some intermittent materials that expand under fire in order to block an air passage, and those we can't find a replacement to plastic from at the moment. And likewise, under the ground, there is an invisible gas with no smell called radon in the UK. And the way of making sure that doesn't get into people's houses is to put a plastic sheeting down underneath the house. And again, that's a legislative requirement in the UK, so we can't get rid of that component and find a component for that membrane that isn't plastic. Having said that, we can remove the vast majority of plastic from the house. The plastic that goes in the membrane in the walls, the plastic in the kitchens, the plastic in the windows, the plastic in the doors, the plastic in the flooring, the plastic in the paint. There are all sorts of places where we found plastic where we are removing it from. Okay. Shall I stop share? You're muted, I think. You're muted, I think, Sultan.
Yeah, I was. How far can you go? Like, can you give a percentage? Like how?
I mean, we're just trying to get our heads around how to measure it at the moment in terms of the plastic we've removed. And there are various ways you could do it. You could use weight, or you could use individual materials. Certainly in terms of individual materials, we're removing about 90% of the plastic from individual materials that go into the house. We haven't tried to equate that as a weight yet, and I'm not quite sure how we would do that.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Carl from the audience? Please.
I've got some here. So I've got Ad asked, is it possible to give plastic components, e.g. electrical sockets, a second life? That's difficult with electrical regulations, I have to say. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. It's not something that's usually done because of that. And also the plastic becomes brittle and therefore comes to an end of its natural lifetime as well. Peter, what were the most easy plastic parts to replace? I think the easiest things were the windows, to be honest. Replacing UPVC windows was very, very easy for us to do and required very little thought. The flooring as well, replacing plastic vinyl flooring with linoleum flooring was also a very easy win for us. So those were probably the easiest parts to replace. Do we have any idea of the percentage of consumer plastic bags in the ocean compared to plastic uses in buildings? We do know that construction is the second largest polluter of all the industries for plastics in the world. And something like, I've got to get the figure right because I only heard it this morning, something like 30% of the plastic that ends up in the ocean comes from the construction industry. Having said that, the consumer plastic bags is significant as a pollution source, and single-use plastics in the construction industry is still a big issue. And getting rid of that single-use plastic, where your screws for your kitchen worktop come in a plastic bag that's completely unnecessary, is a part of what we need to attack, as well as trying to get rid of the plastic from the worktop itself as well. So the issue though is less the material that ends up in the ocean, but when plastics are in the ocean, they break down into microbeads, and it is those microbeads that the turtles that you saw in the picture and the fishes are eating. And in fact, I heard a shocking statistic that 100% of juvenile turtles on our planet now have microbeads in their ingestive systems. And so there really is a significant problem there. because if turtles have it, you can bet your bottom dollar that fishes have it, and it's ending up on your dinner plate as plastic microbeads for you to eat, and you're eating them as well.
We have some room for another question, actually. If there is another question from the audience. Yeah, please unmute yourself.
Carl, is it really, let's say, the motivation of Accord or from yourself to ban out plastics, or is it also, let's say, sector driven by the housing associations in the UK or the building industry? Or
I think that Accord, I think it's very much Accord driven. I think will be the answer to that. I think in terms of the way that we came about this, Accord's had a long history of trying to promote low carbon housing and has been a leader in the UK around delivering low carbon housing. We have our own timber frame factory producing low carbon housing. And a couple of years ago, when we started this journey, we looked, we had our head office is on the side of a main motorway, and they were doing some building work on the main motorway. And so all of our senior management spent their time sat stationary on their way to work with a great big Marine Conservation Society poster with that picture of that turtle on. And the thought occurred to the senior management of Accord and ourselves at the time that what we'd done in terms of producing low carbon housing was we were producing very efficient, very cheap to heat, very high quality homes, but a key component of that home was taking out the old technologies and putting people inside of a plastic bag in order to make it airtight and warm for people. And so we set ourselves a challenge of how do we design out that plastic bag, because we were seeing the damage that plastic bag was doing when we were sat on the motorway trying to get into work every morning.
Okay, thanks.
Carl, we have two more questions. Jeroen is asking, are there initiatives in the UK we could learn from? And Peter is asking, is there more interest in constructing free plastic houses in UK?
Okay, so in terms of Jeroen's question, there is, I think there's a lot of interest around plastics at the moment in the construction industry. There's an organisation called the Alliance for Building Sustainable ABSP. I think it's products, Alliance for Building Sustainable Products. They do a lot of work and have a plastics working group, and they have some of the major house builders participating in that. The main focus that ABSP has is in terms of single-use plastic and trying to get rid of those little plastic bags that have two nails in it when you buy something from IKEA or also on building sites, etc., etc. In addition to that, there is a organisation called Changing Streams, and they are looking to phase out plastic completely from the construction process and producing sort of alternative specifications for where plastic is used at the moment. And I think they've got a website that's going live today. So those initiatives in the UK are beginning to happen, but I think the UK and Europe is at a very early stage in terms of exploring plastics. And I'm not sure about the rest of Europe, but we have a sort of national institution called David Attenborough who makes nature programs, and he's done a lot of work around the oceans and showing the problem that plastic is causing to our oceans and killing wildlife. And so there's a big push in the UK to phase out plastics, which I think is a push that is seen throughout Europe. I heard recently of a Greek Isle banning all single-use plastics. And so I think it's an emerging trend rather than something that is an established part of the sort of green housing agenda in the UK.
Carl, could you reflect on the last question really shortly? What will the residents notice if indifference in the building? Are they involved in the process?
Well, the homes that we build are going to be managed by a cooperative. So yes, they are going to be very involved in the process in terms of specifying colours, etc., etc. We're having to restrict them to work within the ethos of the plastic-free culture that we're developing there. In terms of the differences, it's actually a higher specification that they will notice. So rather than the sort of normal social housing standard range of kitchens that we put into a house, they will have timber kitchens rather than having plastic baths and plastic sinks in their bathroom. They will have ceramic baths and ceramic sinks in their lifetime. Rather than having cheap plastic windows, they will have nice timber windows with aluminium capping on the areas where the water goes. So the residents will notice an improved specification in terms of their living environment. But other than that, there will be no difference to our standard home.
Thank you so much, Carl.
Pleasure.
For your nice presentation and your answers. Let's move on to the second speaker. Jill Vervoort is a sustainability advisor at Groene Grachten. They're doing a really interesting project. They are turning the red light district to green light district. And I'm so curious, are you changing the color of the lights, or are you doing something different than that? So I have asked her a few questions. I will repeat those questions, and in her presentation, she will be answering these questions. So, what are you doing in red light district? Is energy transition somehow connected with circular economy? How could you address circularity in monumental renovation projects? And the floor is yours, Jill.
Thank you. First of all, it's a good pronunciation about the Dutch name, the Groene Grachten. It's not an easy name, I think. And thank you for the invitation. But before I can tell you a little bit more about the Green Light District, I think it's a good thing that you can kind of understand what we do as a company. So I'm working as an advisor in sustainability in monumental buildings, and we were. Let's share it in another way. Here, this is better. And we were kind of founded by Wubbe Ockels. It was the first Dutch space astronaut. And when he came back, he was really inspired about that we want to preserve the world and that we need to do something with the energy transition. So he kind of came up with the idea of making a kennel house more sustainable. And if you can show that in a monumental building, it's possible to go to a sustainable living environment, then we can do it everywhere. So that's kind of something that we were working on with the company in every project. And the red light district is just one example of it. It's like a big consortium. We work with a different kind of parties. So we are just one of several. We're also working with TU Delft, but also the municipality in Amsterdam. And we have like a rooftop revolution involved. We're doing lots of things with making the environment more green. And a lot of bottom-up constructions to kind of really get the people who are living in this area getting involved and come up with their own ideas to make the area more sustainable. So let me first show you. We're a rather young team. We're only existing for 8 years, and we're kind of doing lots of different projects right now. So we do like advisory projects, and there's also one of the things that we're doing in the red light district as well. So we really advise in how can you make a monumental building more sustainable, because it's like an integral, you really need to take all the things into account, because if you change something in the installation of the facade, then it also affects the ventilation, and you need to have a look at how do you heat the building, can we change it, can it go off gas, or what are the plans from the municipality to kind of look at the more sustainable future. But besides really doing the advising in the monuments, we also have like a platform called the Groene Menukaart. It's actually to help people to show all kinds of measures you can take within your building, and it varies from really quick wins to really far-going renovation that you can kind of know what to do, how you can insulate the building. Because if you want to insulate, for example, your roof, you really need to take all the monumental values into account, but also to see what you're changing in the building physical aspects. And if you want to go off gas, is how can you do that without affecting the comfort in the house and without having a too high electricity bill, etc., etc. So we kind of try to make this understandable within the red light district for homeowners to do this themselves as well. And as I said, we really want to work with the people who are living in this this neighborhood, but also who are working in this area, because you have lots of shop owners, restaurants, and all of them are part of this big challenge to kind of work together. And in order to do this, we have kind of 5 pilot projects, you can call them. The first one is making 2 apartments more sustainable. So we work with a renting company who's having lots of apartments in this area, and 1 apartment is taking off the gas with infrared heating panels, and 1 has received a heat pump. Actually, the last one I'm living in myself, so I'm also kind of showing how it is as a renter to live in such kind of apartment. Then we have 1 kennel house in the middle of the area, and we are working right now on making a plan to get it off gas. So we're really investigating how can we insulate the building, and there's lots of maintenance which hasn't been taken care of in the last 5 to 10 years. So there's lots of things to cover in this project. And this is also the building where a hub will be created to kind of get all the knowledge that we received in all kinds of projects into the neighborhood. So people can just walk in, have a chat with us, or come with their own plans and to kind of share what they want to do. And next to that, we have like 3 projects which are kind of in the first phase right now. One is getting a sustainable shopping street, a sustainable building block, and the K. They are also working on the case in the city center, and that's also a really good possibility to combine with, for example, putting in opportunities to exchange heat between buildings, or kind of making a new grid for spreading heat between buildings itself, or with the water sites in the canals. So those first 2 are really quite far in the project, but the rest is still kind of developing. We need to kind of get the parties going and get the good connections between all the parties involved. But I think like one interesting part for you guys to see is that when we are trying to renovate, or at least looking into making the monumental buildings more sustainable, we have lots of things to take into account. That's kind of our role as the Groene Grachten. We want to show that it's possible to put in insulation and to put in an off-gas installation, but it needs to be all taken care of with certain measures, that you cannot really lose the monumental values of the building itself, and that it will not be rotten because the insulation is affecting the facade or the constructions. And we cannot do that with only us 10 advisors, so we want to kind of share this information as much as we can. And we're right now working on a tool to kind of spread this information, and as a kind of a tool to instruct other people when they are at a building site, that they can kind of take our tool and do like a quick scan themselves without us having there. For example, you have like the Monumental. They already inspect a lot of monumental buildings once in the 2 years. So they go there, and then instead of only looking at the maintenance for the monumental building itself, we want to show them that they can also kind of already inventorize what they can do about the sustainability part of the building as well, to kind of integrate it in the maintenance that they already try to schedule for the building. So this, for example, would be our tool in green for the green canals. But then you have also for the Monumental Grachten, and they can log in, and then they have their own tool to work with as well. So we want to kind of expand our impact in that sense, and then we would like to do that as well here in the within the Green Light district as a pilot, and then scale it up to the rest of the Netherlands. But I think maybe the most important, or at least interesting part within the work we do, is that we're already kind of conserving buildings. We're not breaking them down. That's a kind of a circular way of looking at the building. And the main focus in making this renovation part more circular is probably focusing on the insulation materials, because we're already kind of conserving the wood from the windows, because that's already having a high monumental value most of the time. So for example, we can take out the single glazing, but we need to put in more insulated, for example, vacuum glazing or really thin double glazing. So then if you would look at some interesting views on how we can improve that part of the energy impact in the building, we kind of have a look at how we can use the single glazing which we take out. Maybe it can be put in a different process as well to produce more higher insulating glazing, or for example, insulation for the walls, look more natural products. We also kind of lots of possibilities. We show that you can, for example, use clothes which can be put into insulation material, like the cotton, or there are some projects with the grazing from the sides of the roads, bermgras, to put that into an insulation material. And we have, for example, just above in the north in the Netherlands, around the Zaanse Schans, there's more possibilities to grow a certain kind of rietpluimen. And those are kind of interesting materials to kind of get integrated within our kind of projects. And that I'm maybe not answering all the questions that Sultan is kind of asking me, because I think it's more interesting to kind of look at the circularity within our renovation projects than the relation between energy transition and circular economy itself, because that's maybe not really what we're kind of doing. But I think I would rather give a question to you guys, because I know that you are also focusing on platforms and how to share products. There are already platforms like Building Depots where you can kind of exchange products from historical buildings. But the most difficult part is that they are already having the measures of, for example, windows and other kind of details. They are really specific, and they are not really easy to kind of put in a different monumental building. Like in industrial monumental buildings, it's easier because most of the time they work more with like a vaste mate, like a stramine. So it's in that sense, I think it's a really a challenge to kind of get circular economy involved in the monumental world as well. And I think there are lots of possibilities. Maybe this is the moment to kind of get some ideas off the ground. Yeah. Let me check. I saw some questions coming in, right?
Yeah, you received 2 questions from Carl and Peter. If you can read it, please read loud, then everyone can hear, and because we'll be posting this on YouTube. So.
Is there a big disparity between the cost of electricity and gas in Amsterdam? In the UK, this disparity in cost makes it really difficult to switch to electrical heating systems. Do you face this problem? Let me see. Like I'm not sure. Disparity. What does it mean?
In the UK, electricity for 1 kilowatt hour is 3 times the price of natural gas, and so it makes, if you use the same amount of gas and electricity to heat a property, it makes 3 times as expensive for people to live in an electric property, and that creates problems with fuel poverty if we're changing people from gas to electricity. Is that
Yeah.
an issue you face?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good thing to look at. And that's also the reason that it's not possible to kind of just get out the gas kettle and put in a heat pump, because then the electricity bill will be way too high. And it will just not financially be feasible in that sense, at least not for people who don't have the money for it. But that's also the reason why you really need to focus first on getting the heat losses down. And not only it is important for the electricity bill, but it's also important because a heat pump, for example, only functions well when you have a lower temperature, and otherwise it loses efficiency. So that's kind of why you need it as well, to kind of get the comfort in the building at a proper level. But the thing is as well that we cannot really look in the future, but it will be changing what the costs will be for electricity and for gas. And you can kind of think that they are increasing the taxes. For example, the Netherlands itself, they have, at least what I've been reading, they want to get the taxes higher, so that if a person switches to a heat pump, that the electricity will be more cheaper and that the gases will be more expensive. So if you kind of change the heating system, that it will have the same costs. That's kind of what they try to reach. But at the same time, that's only for the taxes, and we cannot really elaborate on, or we cannot tell what it will be doing for the market price, if you get what I mean.
Jill, I want to challenge you to answer 2 questions in a minute. So we we have to finish the presentation soon.
Let me see. What's
Peter,
the most important thing to have or do in a process to make a building more sustainable? So that's kind of the installation part, if you ask me. And is it technical possible, or possibilities, or the people who are behind it? The thing is that lots of installation things can be done by people who are living there themselves as well, but they need to be aware of what to take into account. And maybe that's also something that if you have like a good platform to show and to share this information, then it can be more interesting. Because no, we don't have enough people who you can kind of we already have like too little people who are able to do that. So the other question is, do you have contacts with the woningcorporaties to exchange knowledge? Not right now in that sense that we have a one-on-one conversations about it, but we do have lots of projects where the corporations are involved. Because we, for example, also work with verenigingen van eigenaren, so like the collective buildings, where almost half of the buildings or apartments are being owned by a corporation. So then the people, the particulieren, the individual homeowners, they want to change something and want to be more sustainable, but then you have to get the corporation on there as well. And most of the time, where they are not really having the major control, they are not really willing to kind of get sustainability already implemented within their maintenance plans. So that's kind of the thing that we're also kind of try to get going as well.
So.
Oh, well, I see something about the list dollars. That's what Ad is talking about. That's what I meant as well with one of the materials, which are we looking into as well. I think this is those kind of materials are kind of growing, and it's a good way to kind of get more more room for those kind of innovations.
The whole research project at the Hogeschool Utrecht is going around that, using listdodden and the production and making it into a material, insulation material and other uses. I know.
Could be an alternative material for you, Carl, as well.
It could well be. Insulation has been a bit of an issue. I was just Googling it actually. Insulation has been an issue for us in terms of finding something that hasn't got plastic in. We thought that insulation would be relatively simple because there's lots of sheep's wool insulation marketed around the world as environmentally friendly insulative material that's relatively natural as a product. But when we looked at it, it has 15 to 25% plastic inside it, and so it failed our plastic test. And we've had to go with wood-pressed insulative materials, boards and rolls of wood pressings to hit our insulation solution. So yes, Lisdos could be something. We have in the pilot stage, but it's not yet at market in the UK, people developing mushroom fungus-based mycelium insulative materials, which I think could be very interesting as well. And I'm going to try and work out exactly what Lisdos is from trying to Google Translate.
Lisdod is cattail. Or...
Yeah, true. Cattail.
So thanks for being here, everyone. It was, I think, a good session. Like yeah, we've managed to make it in 36 minutes. So it's a good job.
It's a wrap.
Yeah, and next time probably we'll be talking with Pari Habitat, and we will see how they are using their doors as furniture, and we will invite an external party to discover new circular implementation. So see you next time, and thank you again. Do you want to add anything, Peter?
No, I just want to thank everybody, and hopefully until next time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, big thanks to Jill. That was really interesting.
Thank you for your story as well, and thanks for inviting me, Sultan.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were here. This was really nice to hear Amsterdam's story for the transition. Okay, have a great day, a great weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.